Sometimes I wonder if there will ever come a time when girl bosses will stop being a plot in the movies and TV shows that I watch. But each year, I am provided with numerous examples as to why girl bosses haven't died yet, and why they probably won't ever fully go extinct. But as long as they are relegated back to niche parts of entertainment, where they are not constantly in every movie and show I see, I can live with that. Because I am starting to get a little tired of how frequently these characters appear. It's particularly exhausting when these girl bosses are not exclusive to one genre or popular movie type. They're in animated movies and shows, live-action Disney remakes, popular superhero genres, science fiction, fantasy television and movies, biopic films, historical drama, contemporary Oscar contenders, and even smaller streaming movies where you think you'd be able to get away from them. The girl boss has perforated every popular film and television genre at least once for the past 10 or so years, and it has been one of the worst entertainment decisions ever made. As a fantasy lover, it's particularly infuriating to see one of my favorite genres absolutely destroyed by modern California feminist politics and ideologies with no knowledge being imparted from the source material or an understanding of how women actually are. And thanks be to God that the tides are finally beginning to turn. It's going to take a long time to right this ship and change course. But at the very least, people are now beginning to see, with their ratings and their dollars, that nonsense like this is not popular, it does not sell, and if entertainment isn't course corrected, people will begin turning to smaller studios who have no interest in peddling this sort of thing. These are some of the most exhausting stories to see and write about, because everyone is the same, no matter what genre they exist within. Whether they have the powers of Captain Marvel, the sword-fighting ability of Galadriel, the tech smarts of Ironheart, the combat skills of Echo, the leadership of Cleopatra, or any other physical or mental capability, the template has been done to death, and it's tormenting. This year alone, we have seen the likes of The Cleaner, G20, Snow White, and Ironheart, and while it's heartening to see those shows and movies fade into obscurity, it's still way too much content being produced. Whether that trend will continue into the rest of the year remains to be seen, but I can only hope that if it does, the vast majority of it will go the way of most of the properties that have been put out this year already. And of course, there are the movies that do feature female leads, who critics do not say as having a girl boss problem, like John Wick Ballerina, and yet those movies still underperform. Because even the notion of female action stars right now has left a bad taste in people's mouths. And honestly, I can't blame them. Because more than anything else, girl boss characters have done the most damage to popular mediums over the years, like Star Wars and Marvel. It's been implemented into other genres to disastrous effect that has even the biggest companies scrambling to course correct before it kills their bottom line for good. And yet, the girl boss still cannot die fast enough. A few months ago, I made a video about the ways in which the girl boss character can kill any story no matter what genre it's in. But something I've learned recently is that the girl boss not only kills the plot and the character itself, but something else that has taken a pretty big but subtle hit in comparison to everything. And that's dialogue. Good dialogue in a story these days is like fresh water in a desert. There's nothing around for miles, and then you find a good show or a movie with good and coherent dialogue with regular characters who speak normally to each other. And it's like finding a 5-star buffet. One of the things that is instantly noticeable about girl boss characters is the way in which they speak and the dialogue that they use to interact with everyone around them. Oftentimes it's combative or else just downright strange. One of the earliest examples of the girl boss character ruining dialogue comes from the CW show Batwoman. Ruby Rose played the main character in this show, even more than Captain Marvel was, where the girl boss dialogue really got started. You all remember this scene, right?
Due to fix his suit.
The suit is literal perfection.
It will be. When it fits a woman.
Dialogue like this not only doesn't make sense in the grand scheme of anything the show was trying to demonstrate, but it reveals that the show had plans to make this a feminist activist project far more than just a superhero show. And any good that the main character did would be because she's a woman and nothing else. It wasn't even enough to say that the suit would have been perfect when it fit her specifically. It was just the revelation that for all time, or at least as long as the show aired, that the character of Batman would only be the highest form of good possible if a woman was playing the role. Who writes like that? Of course, it's not the only example of strange and clunky dialogue in the show, but it's certainly the most prominent when it came to displaying the show's intentions. Other examples consist of constant comparisons between Kate Kane and Bruce Wayne, how she's exactly the same, but also somehow better, along with an innate sympathy for villains and a willingness to excuse everything that they have done. Other examples that cannot be forgotten, of course, include Captain Marvel, who broke a man's hand simply for hitting on her, defeating the villain by claiming that she has nothing to prove to him. There could have been numerous other ways to win the fight, but of course it had to end in a punchy statement about putting down her personal patriarchy that sounds fake in comparison to just normal dialogue. It also results in bizarre, metaphorical dialogue, especially in the case of fantasy or science fiction. Oftentimes, the women in these shows behave like a bizarre cross between a dominatrix and a general, promiscuous and yet emotionally distant, refusing to care for others or even sometimes treat them as human beings. I'm at a loss as to understand which version is worse, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day at all. The dialogue is what establishes these characters as emotionally distant, unbelievable, and out of touch from reality. Their dialogue is sometimes also filtered through a power paradigm. Those who have it, those who want it, and those who don't. As a result, the dialogue becomes combative and nothing else. And that is exhausting to hear constantly. When every show becomes about competition or legacy reshaping or a metaphorical cowboy duel, the purpose of the story becomes lost. And the girl boss is the most frequent part of any story that uses this awful dialogue. No matter what role the girl boss has to play or what genre she appears in, most of her dialogue is that of a queen giving orders to her subjects and expecting them to obey her no matter what. And once the power dynamics are gone from dialogue and normal conversations return, we can get back to dialogue that actually means something. Conversations that have value and where it's all about the story in which the characters play their role and not the role that needs to be realized. Another thing that the girl boss character has robbed stories of is inspiration. Each one exists in a period of stagnation where they simply wait to be acknowledged by others. And the longer it takes for others to acknowledge their greatness, the greater the consequences will be for them. They are never allowed organic moments because they are not organic characters. The concept of a character arc doesn't apply to them because perfection is introduced immediately and remains that way throughout the story. The only thing necessary for a story like this to conclude is the public acknowledgement of the perfection. Therefore, things like inspiration and underdog stories don't exist for the girl boss character because there is no need whatsoever for them to improve. They remain the same all throughout the story, with the only change happening being the characters around them. And if there is even a moment of introspection, it is immediately brushed aside or dismissed by the characters that are simply there to be the girl boss's yes men and women. Inspiration does not exist for these characters because they are the inspiration themselves. It's not something to find, but a role they have already cultivated with their own perceived greatness. And that doesn't sound like a very heroic or even memorable character, especially when the girl boss is frequently doing things that give people the very opposite of inspiration. Whether they are committing genocide, mind-enslaving large groups of people, committing murder, stealing, assassins for hire, or else abandoning family, the girl boss gives the exact opposite of inspiration and motivation. She is the reason that stories are now straight lines rather than peaks and valleys that every character should have. As a result of the girl boss, every story becomes the same, and every character is just a carbon copy of the other, with the same bad attitude, selfishness, and need for superiority that well-written female characters never had. The girl boss also represents selfish storytelling. Not just for the characters, mind you, but for the audience. There was a time when stories could be enjoyed by everyone, no matter who they were. Star Wars, Marvel, Lord of the Rings, Jurassic Park, you name it. These were all mediums that males and females enjoyed. We didn't need to see ourselves in the characters, whether they were male or female, in order to appreciate them. They didn't need to go through perceived specific cultural struggles as a result of their gender in order for us to relate to them. But nowadays, the girl boss exists under the guise of the audience, particularly the females having someone to relate to, which is pretty insulting, to be honest. Having a strong female character is perceived in Hollywood as one of the highest forms of moral storytelling, which is terribly ironic considering that it's Hollywood of all places. But the girl boss character is not written for the audience or as a legitimate form of storytelling. It's written to please the person who is doing the writing of the character. It's this strange form of cyclical pleasure seeking where the writer or producer or even director has this idea in their head about what this female character should be and refuses to capitulate to the needs of the story. The girl boss represents what they want to be, an ideal that they wish they could see in the world, and it doesn't matter what the audience thinks about it because their form of self-expression is what's truly paramount. It's a sort of gimme storytelling that refuses to share or create things and human experiences for the character that makes them relatable and memorable to everyone, and instead hoards their perceived perfection, which is actually anything but. It seems as if we are finally seeing the beginnings of this character's funerary march, and hopefully it won't be much longer until this character and version of storytelling are thoroughly and unlamentably dead. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys. What are your thoughts on the girl boss characters that we have seen in 2025? And do you think that the trope is finally coming to an end? Be sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comment section and let the conversations begin. Until next time, everyone.